Hello and welcome to the Rioja Wellness Podcast. This is Margit Jefferson and I am here with Andrei Gospodarczyk, the founder of Rioja. The vision behind Rioja Wellness is to create a tipping point in wellness worldwide. And this podcast will contribute towards that. In each episode, we explore different health issues that present as case studies in Andrei's practice. They range from small, easily managed ailments to serious and complex illnesses. We explore body parts and how they respond to nutrition and environment, and we work on inspiring people to change their life for good through an everyday wellness focus. Rioja is a wellness modality that is unique because it focuses on healing and wellness through basic food and exercises that maneuver the body back to a state of balanced health. People literally jump out of their skin with energy and vitality when they follow Rioja. And it's an incredible turnaround for many who have had low energy for years through to people who have had complex health issues that don't seem to budge. The podcast is an interview format and ranges from 20 to 60 minutes. And if you'd like more of an introduction on Andrei, please see the 3-minute introduction in the first podcast on the homepage. And at the end, I'll be here to give you a little bit more information. So without further ado, let's get into this episode. This episode is part of the liquids series. The next liquid that we're going to talk about is soft drinks and diet soft drinks. So full sugar ones and diet soft drinks. And what do you think about those with respect to gaining full health and maintaining full health?
Diet soft drinks and similar products, of course, came as a direct response to trying to make a healthier version or a diet version, whatever that means, of normal soft drinks, which were, of course, deadly, full of sugar. And it was causing big problems and is causing big problems. So people trying to watch their weight, I suppose. But the worst condition you can get is not so much that you put on weight, but that your digestive system stops working altogether and you can eat enormous amounts of food and drink lots and lots of sugary drinks and not put on weight at all. And that's a very common condition. Hypo, we call it, where the thyroid isn't working very well at all. The thyroid regulates your metabolism. So yeah, you might be having a diet drink because you want to lose weight, but people should be aware that sugary drinks can also create a condition where you can't put on weight at all, and it becomes a very big problem. The whole digestive system starts to collapse. You're actually better off if you're putting on weight in a lot of cases. So diet drinks are a response to drinks full of sugar. Now, these diet drinks have different chemicals in them to give you the same sort of sweetness. There is similar response in quote unquote the health market, where we have things like fructose in high concentration. We have maple syrup, honey, and similar types of products like corn syrup, etc., to varying degrees, either not as bad for you or even worse for you than white sugar. And there was a little while there where people thought brown sugar was maybe a healthier alternative to white sugar. But these diet drinks have different kinds of chemicals in them that quite often are considered to be carcinogenic, even by any standard, whether it be any nutritional standard. They're so highly chemicalized. Now, what I mean by that, Margit, is that these things like fructose are then processed even more than white sugar, or things like aspartame and different sorts of chemicals that are very sweet. Now, products like stevia, which are considered natural sweeteners, present in a lot of these so-called healthier alternatives, and diet drinks are usually made with very cheap chemical sweeteners, and they're fairly toxic if they're anything like aspartame or something similar, where they're giving you the sweetness. And now they're using fructose and high concentrated fructose in some of them, but usually it's just a straight chemical. It's probably a good idea to just look up the product that's on the back, that is the sugar alternative. Now, the reason that these things are a problem is that they're trying very, very hard in the soft drink to make it taste the same as if it had sugar in it, but they're using an alternative chemical. So it becomes an artificial substitute for an artificial product. Now, what that means is that they've gone through much more chemicalization and much more refining process to achieve something that it wasn't supposed to be. So white sugar comes out as sugar from sugar cane through a process, a simple distillation process, simple refining process, and then they found they need to work on something else. It might be a different label, but it ends up being very sweet, and they're trying to make it as similar as they can to sugar without the sugar label, so it's a different source. So more chemicalized, more refined even than white sugar, and in a lot of cases you're better off with white sugar. There are products in the market that are things like margarine and low-fat different dairy products, and a lot of the time you're much better off with the original product. In other words, good quality organic butter, good quality organic milk has been proven to be actually a very healthy food source. If you're in a cold climate, if you're fairly physically active, none of these people who have good quality dairy in their diet and they're working hard, and it's small amounts, yes, they're not living on it, they're not using it as a food source, they're not living on liters of it, they're only using it as a yogurt or as a cheese, but it's very high quality, it's very good quality. The cows are in the fields and they're proud of that, and they're not getting sick. They're not getting arteriosclerosis. They're not getting saturated fat diseases. So that's the problem with diet drinks, that they're using a chemical to create the same effect. And it's even more artificial and more chemical than the original thing of sugar, which was already deadly.
So we're talking here about diet soft drinks like Coke Zero, Red Bull, Coke Light, Diet Pepsi, and I'm sure every other soft drink has a diet variation. I've heard you talk about they're as bad for you as drinking full strength, but that is something that I'm querying in my own mind, because I've just heard you say that drinking full strength or with cane sugar is better than drinking a diet soft drink. So can you just clear that up for me?
Absolutely. I'm saying that I generally say, because people are having diet drinks because they're scared of Coca-Cola. They're having diet drinks, Diet Fanta or Pepsi Light or whatever, because they've gotten very concerned or worried about Pepsi. And so my simple response is, look, it's just as bad. It's bad in a different way, and it's just as bad. What I'm saying to them is don't have either. And what I'm saying to you and giving a deeper explanation is in most cases it's actually worse, and you're not better off. Now, there's a lovely story about one of the people working with me and a lovely teacher, and they were asked whether you can use miso, which is a lovely fermented product from Asia, and we need to use these fermented products from Asia because we've forgotten how to make our own in the West, which is a very sad thing, and hopefully we can recreate them again, our pickles and our lovely fermented products. I mean, my grandmother used to have something rotting in the cupboard. I'm sure all your grandmothers did too, the people out there. Miso is a black salty paste, yeah, and they asked if it was all right to just spread it on bread and have it that way. And her response was, as a reasonable response to the question, is no, you have to cook with it. It's such a strong substance. 1 teaspoon of miso is like eating a steak, and it's so strong that you need to use it like salt and in the cooking process. It's not going to kill you, of course, putting it on toast straight off, but her response was a very simple line, which was, no, it's too strong. You might as well be eating Vegemite. It's a simple response. It's a reasonable response. You might as well be eating Vegemite, which in her mind was, it's not good. Eating Vegemite is a strong, nasty substance that is full of yeast and far too much salt, and it's been used in the past as a health food, but for us, we're a little bit more concerned about what we put in our mouths, and it's far too strong and it's not good for you, Vegemite, as a general rule. So her response was, you might as well be eating Vegemite. Then for the next 3 months, I had to fight very hard to get a whole lot of people, which were literally thousands of people around us at that time, and had to fight very hard to get this one simple statement out of the community that we're involved in of people and natural therapies and health food stores and associations and different therapy centers. One little word going around out there, which was, oh, they reckon Vegemite is good for you. So it can end up that way, unfortunately. It's very easily, quickly, yeah. Oh, no, they reckon it's good to eat Vegemite. It's just as good as miso, So, oh dear, so you can end up there very easily. So without a long explanation about the sugar and fructose and aspartame, and I don't even remember all those modern, and they're quite deadly, a lot of those chemical substances that they're using now in Equal and these different little sugar packets. Saccharin, do they still use saccharin now?
Yeah, I think they do.
I think they still do, yeah, but it's proven carcinogenic. I mean, there's no arguing there. I mean, it's known as a carcinogen, and yet they're still pouring it in, anyway. So, yeah, people would rather have that than put on weight, maybe, I don't know. But these chemicals are really very nasty substances, probably, and in per volume for some people, much more dangerous a substance than even white sugar, which I think is ridiculous to use as any kind of pleasure substance. You're much better off, and it's much nicer to have things like cooked fruit or dates or something similar, and things like fructose, which has been boiled down or reduced until it's as strong as sugar, is going to have the same effect as white sugar. So something that tastes like something in terms of natural therapies, and the Rioja thinking is if it tastes the same, it's having the same effect. It might have a different label, but it's having a similar effect. So if something is sweet, understanding the 5-element metaphor, understanding the medical model that we use to explain healing, health, and how the body works to ourselves and to other people, if we understand that, then we know a very simple thing, which is that if it's sweet, it has a similar effect to any other sweet thing. If it's salty, it has a similar effect to any other salty thing. If it's too bitter, then it's too bitter. And whatever the chemical name is and wherever it's come from, nevertheless, it's bitter. So, for example, walnuts will eventually end up bitter if they go rancid. And we know that that's toxic. We know that that is actually poisonous for your body system when something becomes rancid and bitter. So anything that goes rancid will end up bitter, no matter what the chemical is, no matter what the food substance is, which is maybe burning something. And it's so burnt that it becomes bitter. The bottom of the pan scrapings are black charred food. It's not good to eat because it has a very bitter taste. The same with sweet. Whether it's a chemical substitute that is making something sweet or whether it's sugar itself, as a general rule, they're the same. And you might as well be having Coca-Cola as having the Diet Coke. But in terms of the impact on your health, really, and much more complex answer is that they have gone through a lot more refining, and it's just a trick that you're being fooled into thinking that it's sugar, and that nastiness that it has to go through for you to be fooled that way is actually a stronger chemical.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And as you were speaking, I was thinking about a statement that you made at one point on another day, that the long-term health implication, so years and years and years of drinking diet soft drinks or sugary soft drinks, embeds itself deep within the body, that then often takes a jackhammer to get out of to get it out. And that might not be the right analogy, but I know that we were exploring health issues, and you were saying, well, what did this person drink? Were they drinking sugary soft drinks during their teenage years? Because this is a very deep problem. And so is that a valid point to make in the context of this?
Absolutely, and extremely important for people to understand that when you're talking about these sort of things, that when we say they're dangerous, I mean, we believe that to the fibre of our being, because we see people who are very sick just make one or two little changes to their diet. For example, just giving up sugar and swapping to healthy sources of sweet, like fried onions and cabbage and soups, pumpkin soups, and more salads, and using oil in their cooking, etc., 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 and not just alternate sweets like lots of fruit and dried fruit. That's too strong, and you're not going to have the healing response. You're just maintaining the condition, unfortunately. Fructose is going to make a very big impact, the same way that refined sugar maybe has in terms of maintaining your problems. So what's the important point is that some people get very, very, very sick very quickly by the time they're in their teens, or by the time they're 7 or 8 years old. Other people, depending on their constitution, depending on what other foods they're eating, depending on their lifestyle, depending on where they live, many factors involved, they might still be reasonably okay in their 40s and 50s. They've just got a hip problem. So that it's relative, and that's really important for people to know. It's not based on a test tube theory. We're looking at human beings that have particular lives and constitutions. So where one person can adapt maybe to sugar in some way, where they're just emotional all the time, and so they go for a run every day and they have a cold shower, but they love their coffee and their 3 teaspoons of sugar, and they say, look, I'm fine. And they have offset it a little bit, but it's still digging in there, and they'd be so much better off without it, doing their run and having their cold shower in the morning without the coffee and the sugar, and they don't even need it. It's just a habit, and they'd find maybe a whole lot of little problems go away. Their emotional states, maybe their balding will go away, maybe the little rash that they have on their left foot disappears, little things that are signs of problems that might come up in 10 years' time. So it hits them when they're 60 or when they're 80, and they didn't die from some horrendous mental disease that they developed as a teenager because their constitution wasn't strong enough. And so even within healthy eating, where you're eating beans and grains and all the rest of it, so some people are not healthy enough to eat the full range of good quality healthy foods. So it's all relative, and that's the thing. If you're a teenager and you're eating sugar and you think you're okay, that's okay. It's you don't know, and it might take 30 years for the problem to show up. And someone says, oh, it's the sugar, but I've been having it so long. Why is it suddenly now? It's been developing over a period of time, and you've managed to cope with it because the human body is amazingly adaptable. It can even learn to adapt to things like McDonald's. It's just an incredible thing, but it leaves you very vulnerable, and it leaves you very much on the edge where you can catch bugs easily, you can hurt your back easily, irritable and tense all the time, need lots of sleep. So it does tax you, even though you're coping.
Yeah, that's a really great point and a really great description of what happens. You mentioned earlier that ultimately the digestive system can collapse. Is that what all of this heads towards? Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, again, because the work that we do talks about people and talks about the relationship between people and the things that happen to them or they do to themselves. There's many factors involved. If you live in a cold climate, some animal product, I mean, when I talk about cold climate, I don't mean Melbourne or Boston. I'm talking about a cold climate like, northern Russia or Siberia or Alaska or something, where you need animal products. It actually is necessary. There's nothing grows there, and people can be very healthy and well in these places. They can cope very, very well with some animal product in the diet, maybe a little bit, maybe a lot, all depends. It's all relative. But yes, the weak people who are not strong, like I said earlier, sugar can burn out the digestive system. It's a medical fact. It's well known. Everyone knows, even from their childhood, that sugar sends your whole digestive system from your nose right down to your anus into shock. Now, your simple understanding of it might be that your auntie used to say to you, or your mother or your grandmother, don't eat sweets before dinner because you will lose your appetite. And the reason that you lose your appetite is because your digestive system goes into shock. And the reason it goes into shock is because it thinks that you've just eaten an enormous amount of food and it's searching for it. The sugar absorbs straight into your bloodstream. Your body loves sugar. It adores sugar. It's the end product of lots of hard work, chewing, breaking it down in your stomach, processing it into a molecular level in your small intestine, where some of it gets absorbed there, and then finally absorbed mineral components through your large intestine. Hours of work, which creates byproducts of acids, and lots of energy is required to do that. 3/4 of the digestive process, or maybe 50%, depending on whether you've chewed it well enough, goes into digesting the food that you're trying to get energy from. So half the energy that you're getting from the food is being used up in processing it. So when you eat something straight sugar, your body just sees it as the end product of digestion, and it sucks it straight into the bloodstream even before it gets to the stomach 3/4 of the time, through the lining in your mouth, through the lining in your stomach, or maybe it gets down into your small intestine. Depends what kind of sugar, how long you've held it in your mouth, which is why it's so nice in your mouth, which is why we keep the lollies in our mouth, for a long time. We don't just swallow them. That's silly. So it depends on your constitutional strength, who you are, where you're living, but your digestive system, all of us, goes into shock. There's no doubt about that, whether you're very strong or whether you're very weak. Being in shock, then it makes it very stressed. The spleen and pancreas, which regulates the hormones of the digestive system, go into overdrive, and it eventually, as we all know, that things like sugar, and including fructose now, they know finally that fructose can create just as much drama. We know now that it's one of the foods that create different levels of blood sugar disorder, whether it be diabetes or something similar. If you're very weak, that shock system, it can just stay shocked and not be able to process food anymore. And so you might be eating healthy salads, you might be eating good sourdough bread, you might be eating well-made bean casseroles, but you're not absorbing it. Now, you can pick yourself as being one of these people, because even after a good meal, you still feel like having something sweet at the end. You're not processing your food properly. And so you might be full to the gullet, eaten an enormous amount of food, chewed it properly as best you could, and the food, you can't fit another thing in, but you can still squeeze some sugar in there, a little bit of ice cream, or you can still squeeze some dried fruit or carob bar or some chocolates in on top of that, and then you're finally satisfied. You should have been satisfied with the sugar from the good food, but your digestive system is so weak that it only gets satisfied with the chemical at the end, and you're not absorbing the food that you ate. Now, there's a lot of ideas out there now that are very clear about the fact that people eat good food, eating their steak and 3 veggies and all the rest of it, but they're still enormously B vitamin deficient. They've had a lot of dairy all their lives. Even from childhood, they were forced to have a bottle of milk every day, a small one, but nevertheless, and cheese and butter and a glass and a half of full cream milk in their chocolate, and they still end up with osteoporosis at the later stages of their lives. So they're not absorbing the nutrients. Their digestive system isn't working. So if you're one of those people that the digestive system isn't working, you eat a lot of food, but you still feel like sweets at the end, and you're agitated until you get that sugar hit at the end, then you're probably one of those people. The digestive system is failing you. It's not absorbing properly. You're not absorbing your minerals. You're not breaking down carbohydrates. Or half the food you're eating is just going straight through you. You're wasting your time. You're only absorbing the fluffy food. Your belly is bloated and your body is skinny and wasted.
That's really profound. I love that tip, or that massive tip, that at the end of the meal, if you feel like something's sweet, then that's a very strong indicator that you need to examine your digestive system and do something about it. I think that's massive for people to think about.
Yeah, it's nice to have something sweet, but you don't have to have it. There's a big difference between having to have it for any kind of satisfaction compared to nice to have something. And we should be happy, especially if we're trying to heal ourselves or maintain a healthy lifestyle and not indulge too much. I mean, we should be happy with a nice warm cup of tea. We should be, and should not desperately needing something. There's a big difference between those two categories, yeah?
Yeah, there's a lot of people who need a piece of chocolate after dinner, or likewise when they go out for dinner, they read the dessert section first to make sure that they leave enough room for dessert. So, yeah, a nice to have or a need to have. I just wanted to ask you about the concept of these chemicals. Everybody knows the test with the CocaCola test. You put an old coin in a glass of CocaCola and it comes out clean. And maybe not everybody, but a lot of people do know about this test. And I'm thinking, if they know about that test, and then they know that Coke is strong enough to clean that coin, why don't they make the leap between what it's doing to their bodies? What's going on there?
Yeah, it's a very, very, really good question, Margaret. It's great. Now, I love telling people a lovely story about imagining themselves in the desert, and they haven't had a drink of water in days, and they're really literally dying of thirst. Now, I've been seriously hungry and seriously thirsty, and it's the worst feeling in the world. It's there's nothing more uncomfortable. The worst thing you can do to someone is lock them up and starve them to death. It's a horrendous experience. Yeah, but I try and get them to imagine it and crawling through the desert, and then they come across a pool of black liquid bubbling with yellow foam, and would they be brave enough to drink that? And then quickly point out to them that that's what Coca-Cola looks like. They go, oh yes, well, right, okay. So that image of this black liquid with foam fizzing on top of it, it's not a healthy look. Yeah, so they wouldn't drink it if they hadn't sort of been educated into drinking it in the first place. In fact, when you get healthy, you put a little bit of Coca-Cola in your mouth and you spit it out because it actually tastes disgusting. When people know that Coca-Cola is bad for them and they still keep drinking it, it's the same as the poor people who have a sugar addiction of any kind, or a chemical addiction. Now, Coca-Cola started having cocaine in it. They originally it had cocaine in it, and then they swapped to caffeine and massive loads of salt and sugar in it to keep that peak experience of stimulation happening for their customers. As you know, it's called the sweet point. The problem for them is the same as any other drug addicted person. They know that the cocaine, the heroin, the crack cocaine is doing them, it's destroying their lives. In their heads they know that it's not good, but the pleasure it gives them and the delight and the survival response that's happening in your body, because your body says, I need this, because that chemical has created a need for itself within your body. And survival overrides common sense every time. You just can't. The only way to get over these things, solve the problem of knowing that it's bad for you and getting over it, the only problem is knowing that we need to eat healthy food first, and then our addictions slowly go away, because healthy food wins. So if you're having cups of tea that are like bancha or cookie char or dandelion root coffee, if you're having well-cooked grains and vegetables and beans and chewing your food and going just for a 5-minute walk in the morning, you'll find that you really don't want the stimulation of something like Coca-Cola. It's not a big deal. Once you start putting something good in there, the body very quickly adapts to the other. But if it's only junk food, if the only source of stimulation you're getting is white bread and meat, then you need that stimulation of Coca-Cola, because white bread and meat makes you so tired. You need the caffeine, you need the sugar hit, you need the cocaine effect to get you through the day. My only really big problem, Margaret, is not that people don't know. They can't help themselves. My big problem is actually seeing children being given these things. They don't need it, and it's a sin. One of my teachers copped a lot of abuse from one of the mothers in a yoga class when the teacher said, look, giving children this sort of product, it should be considered child abuse. She got quite offended by that, but it really is, and it should be considered child abuse to give children this sort of food. It will make them addicted, where they scream for hours if they don't get it again. We're starting to pass legislation saying you can't put lollies and soft drinks at children's eye height, because it's not fair. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It reminds me of a story that a friend told me, that her child wanted to try Coca-Cola, and child was quite young, and so what the mother did was say, okay, well, you can try Coca-Cola, but first we need to research it. They went down to the milk bar and bought an icy cold can of Coke in that red shiny can, and they took it home, and the child held it all the way home and had to look at it and hold it and see it and feel it, and then the mother and the child sat down at the dining room table and did some research. And they researched 6 or 7 or 8 articles on Coke and the effects of the Coke on the body. And by the end of that little 5-minute exercise, the child was almost in tears, saying, I actually don't want to try Coke. The mother said, no, you must try it because you can do all the research, but if you haven't tried it, then how are you going to tell people, well, actually, I have tried it and I don't think it's good for you? So the mother made the child open the can of Coke and have a sip of that Coke. And of course, the child spat it all out and said it was the most disgusting thing they'd ever tried. And so the child emptied the can of Coke in the sink and then put it in the bin. Hopefully that will stick.
A lot of it is that simple education before you get addicted, and there's mental problems, there's emotional problems that we use drugs to compensate for, and just the massive fatigue. I mean, society really functions on fear, stress, and drugs now. I mean, everyone is just terrified now of one way or another of losing their jobs, losing their home, and it's the motivation for just getting through the day is an enormous amount of stress, and every product is sold to you based on fear now, and whether it's the religion or insurance or whatever, it's all based on this fear motivation and panic. Society needs to calm down and change a little bit, because things like coffee and CocaCola, they're just part of that social distortion where people are working so hard now. We're not designed for the amount of work that we're doing. People are getting up at 7 a.m. and falling asleep at work. It's not good, but they need the stimulation to get through the day. And like we were saying the other day, in Korea, it's just faster, faster, faster. And we can't keep pushing ourselves at this rate just to survive. It's not a matter of choice anymore. It's the simple, basic requirements of survival, shelter, warmth, food, and security are very hard to maintain now. Both parents have to work very, very hard now in even the simple paradise of Australia, let alone Europe now, where both parents have to work very hard, and strangers are minding our children. And what I'm saying to you is that it's part of the problem. They're not standalone things, and things need to calm down a little bit so people can heal and recover. It's not going to happen quickly, but like in any therapy, you need to know where you can make the changes. All illness is cyclic, where you can maybe do a little bit of yoga to get you off your drug habit of eating far too much food. Maybe a little bit of yoga can shrink your stomach and give you energy and calm you down enough, and you'll find, if I do my 1 or 2 exercises in the morning, I don't feel like eating as much during the day. This really works. I'm breaking the cycle at the point of activity. Or maybe you need some herbs, and so you start having some shiitake mushroom drink at night, or you're adding sea salt into your cooking, and you find that, I've got a lot more energy now. I don't need coffee anymore. I don't even feel like it, because you're not fighting the coffee. You're using a therapy to break the cycle, whether it's society pushing us too hard or whether we're having too much coffee and Coca-Cola and cocaine. I mean, everyone says that middle-class executives are all just literally living on not just cocaine but ice now in a particular bracket of our society in the business world in Australia, for example. I'm sure it's happening in England and Europe the same, where people need to stimulate themselves so much just to get through the day because they're chronically tired. And maybe it's not just illness. What I'm suggesting is that society is just demanding too much for basic survival.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Very, very good. That was excellent. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed this episode on soft drinks, which forms part of the Liquids podcast series. Any listeners who would like to learn more about Andre's work or Rioja can connect and follow on Instagram and LinkedIn using the address of Rioja Wellness. We spell Rioja Ryoho and then add wellness on the end, obviously. Episode notes will be loaded up and available at riojawellness.com, which is the master website. And just a few more things before you take off. Number 1, do you have a health issue or question you would like explored in one of our podcasts? Please submit it to us at the website where there is a contact page, riojawellness.com website. Number 2, would you enjoy being notified by very short email every time we do something on Rioja Wellness? This includes notification of our up-and-coming wellness podcasts and other things towards our tipping point. If you want to receive that, go to riojawellness.com and drop in your email address and you'll get the very next one. And we hope you really enjoy it. Thanks everyone for listening, and thank you, Andre, for another fantastic episode. See you next time.